Funding for this program is made possible by Burke Nursery and Garden Center in Burke, Virginia. You'll find trees and shrubs, perennials and annuals, water garden supplies, houseplants, and bird and gardening supplies. Burke Nursery also provides landscape, plant diagnostic, and installation services, as well as the October month-long Pumpkin Playground Festival featuring hay rides and much more. For more information, you can check out their website or call 703-323-1188. Welcome to Gardening with Burke Nursery, the show where we help you grow your garden and increase the curb appeal of your yard. I'm your host, Misty Kacharis, the horticulturalist at Burke Nursery and Garden Center. Today we're going to talk about extending the life of your vegetable garden. So what does extending the life of your vegetable garden mean? Well, what it means is that at this point, you're taking a look at your zucchini, you're taking a look at your tomato plants, and you're noticing that the crop isn't doing very well. As a matter of fact, you're noticing you're getting little to no crop at all. And so what that means is that the summer months are over and that the time now is to think of what you can do for the fall. This is the time to start looking at your vegetable garden. And what I have here is I have a picture of my vegetable garden. And if you look at the picture, you'll see that the plants are dying back. And what I will do now is harvest what's left. And then I will start removing the plants from the vegetable garden. And the next picture is where I had actually planted potato plants. And after the potato plants were harvested, I started removing the potato plants from the garden, and as soon as this little squash is completed, I will actually also remove the squash as well. So the first step is cleaning your garden. You need to be very careful when you clean your garden. When you look at a lot of books and when you look at the internet, often they'll say, till all the plants back into the soil. And you want to be careful with tilling plants into the soil. The reason is that some of the plants may have actually gotten a fungal disease. And so what I have is I have a picture here of a squash. And if you look at the picture closely, you'll see what looks like white powder on the squash. And this is a fungal infection called powdery mildew. As a matter of fact, I have a very funny story to tell you about powdery mildew. One day when I was at the nursery, I had a mother come in with her son. Her son is, I would say, a young teenager or a preteen. He's 12, 13, and she's kind of pulling him by the arm and she's yanking at him and she says, "I need you to talk to Misty." And he's like shaking his hands going, "Not me, not me." And she says, "I had him pour flour all over my lawn. I want you to have a talk with him. He says that it's not him. He says that it's something else." And I just started laughing. The powdery mildew that you see on the squash plant in the picture looks like a white powder. It also can actually infect your lawn. So what happened in her case is that her entire lawn was infected with this powdery mildew fungus. So her son and I had a good laugh, and from that good laugh, we just moved further along, and she bought the right product to get rid of her powdery mildew. Getting back, though, to removing plant debris, the main reason that you don't want to remove plants with powdery mildew is that powdery mildew will actually stay in the soil. It'll do what we call overwintering. And not only could it impact your new crops that you're going to be planting for this fall, but it could also impact the crops that you're planting for next spring as well. Another plant that you don't want to mix in or till in are your potato plants. As a matter of fact, you don't even want to compost your potato plants. The reason is that those seeds never die, even in the heat of the compost. And compost heat can get well over 160 degrees Fahrenheit. So you don't want to take that compost, put it either in your garden or put it somewhere else in your yard, and suddenly find you have tomato plants growing all over the place. So very important to remove your debris. Now, once you remove your debris, you want to till your soil. You want to till it a minimum of 3 to 4 inches, but if you could till it to 6 inches, that's a lot better. And also, then you want to amend your soil with compost. Now, what I really enjoy is that I get questions from various customers and various other individuals regarding various, we'll keep saying that word, but regarding different questions about gardening. And I've received this email question from Robert. Should I till the soil first and then add compost? Or should I add compost and then till the soil? It's a great question. If you've removed your vegetables and if you're not creating a new garden, that soil is probably very, very loose. In that case, I would just add about 2 to 4 inches of some form of organic matter, some form of compost, and then I would till that all in. However, if you find that you're creating a new garden, or if you find that soil is compacted is a nice way of saying that soil feels like cement and it's as hard as rock, then you do need to till first to loosen that soil and add the compost after you've tilled the soil, and then till the soil one more time to till that compost into the soil. It's very important to make sure you till your organic matter, your compost, into the soil, because if you don't, sometimes that compost, if you will be planting something such as this kohlrabi vegetable into your garden, then what you may learn is that the roots start getting burnt, and you don't want that to happen. And then, by the way, if you do have any questions such as Robert has, please feel free to email me at misty@burkenursery.com, and I'll be happy to answer any of your questions on this show. And what type of compost? Well, there's mushroom compost. And mushroom compost, in honesty, is one of my favorite composts. It's made from what's left over after the mushroom growers have grown the mushrooms. Then you have various forms of leaf compost, leaf humus, leaf grow. You have manure, and there's various forms of manure. The one thing I don't necessarily recommend is that you get fresh manure if it hasn't been homogenized. So you really think if you get the manure, just be very careful where you get your manure. And then, of course, there's always your own compost. And that can be leaf compost, or it can be other forms of compost that you've made yourself. Now, after you've composted, I'm not going to put you through another soil test on this show today, but I believe it's so critical to do soil tests. And the reason for that is that it's important to know what the pH is of your soil. Vegetables love the pH primarily of 6.0 to 7.0, which is going into the neutral state. And if your pH is lower than 6.0 and your pH is closer to 5.7, your vegetables won't be quite as happy in that soil. And I recommend that you put down lime. And there's 2 types of lime. You can use what we call calcitic or agricultural lime. That's the lime that you put down for your lawns. You can use that lime. The other lime is this type of lime, sometimes sold as garden lime, and this is dolomitic lime. Now, what dolomitic lime has that the lawn lime doesn't have is that it has magnesium in it. And so if you need that trace mineral of magnesium, then use the dolomitic lime and try to pronounce that word several times. So what are your cold crop vegetables? Well, we have leafy vegetables such as the kohlrabi, such as the lettuce, such as, this is neat, this is actually cabbage. And then we have your root vegetables, which are carrots and radishes, beets, and then one of my most favorite, of course, is your garlic. So this is one of my most favorite cold crops to plant. If you want an entire list of all the cold crops that you can plant, definitely feel free to email me at Misty@burkenursery.com, and I'll be happy to send you a list of all the cold crops. Now, I have another audience question, and this one is from Judy. Is it better to plant seed or plant actual plants? Well, Judy, this is another great question. I appreciate you emailing me this question, and it actually depends on what you want to plant. If you want to plant your what I call root vegetables, that's your carrots, your beets, your radishes, those are better planted as seed. They don't grow as well if you plant them from actual crops. And I even had a neighbor ask me a question about carrots. Well, what if I rerooted the carrot, which you can do, and planted it in the ground? Will I get a new carrot? The answer is you'll get a beautiful head of carrot greens. And a lot of people like to eat the carrot greens, but you won't get another carrot if you try to do that. And then also, most crops, and as I started saying, you could plant lettuce either as seed or as an actual crop. You can plant your cabbage as seed or an actual crop. Kohlrabi. So some of these you can actually plant as seed or as crop. And it takes 40 to 60 days to mature. And most of these crops will do well with light frost. And here in Northern Virginia, and what we are known as the Piedmont region, we usually get our first light frost at the end of October. But they will survive the first light frost. It's the heavy frost that some of these leafy vegetables won't survive. And yet there are other vegetables such as garlic, such as beets, even carrots that will do well down to 20 degrees Fahrenheit. The nice thing about being in a studio is that you can always pretend that there is something going on that you can't do necessarily outside. So what we're going to do is to show you how to plant seeds, but this is my little seed garden here. And so we'll pretend that this is actually outside in your soil. And one of the things that occurs when you have seeds is there's a tendency to plant your seeds too deep. And what I mean is to make a very big hole like this, and then plant the seeds in that hole. Well, when you plant the seeds that deep, you're not really going to have anything growing. And the reason is, I don't know if the camera can see this, but these seeds are so small, and it would take forever for them to germinate. So you don't really want to plant the seeds any deeper than maybe a ½ an inch of the soil. So I'm going to put this soil back, and what I like to do when I plant seeds into the ground is I like to use a little tool. You can use a pencil as a tool, or you can use a screwdriver as a tool, or you can use a straw, paper straw, as a tool. And all you want to do is very gently create a little demarcation in the seed, very gently. So if you look at the side, I've just gone down maybe 1/4 of an inch is all I've gone down. Now the next thing that you do when you plant your seed, so that your seed will remain moist and actually grow better, is in that little furrow, that little area that you made that little demarcation for the seed is you will take vermiculite. And vermiculite is organic matter that helps with the moisture. And you will take that vermiculite and you will just put that vermiculite into that area that you created where you will be planting your seed, and just put it down into the soil like that. And then you'll take your seed, and even with the tiny seeds, you just want to plant, if at all humanly possible, one little seed about an inch apart. And then all you do is just gently cover it. And then, of course, you'll water it. So that's how you plant most of your seeds. The one seed that is a slight exception to that is your pea seed. And if you look at the size of the pea seed, they do look like shriveled up dried peas that you would buy in any grocery store that you would soak overnight so that then you can have fresh peas. Well, what you do with these peas is that the evening before you actually go to plant them, take a paper towel, wet the paper towel, put these pea seeds into the wet paper towel, and just leave them there overnight, and that will actually start a pre-germination cycle, which will soften the shell, and these peas will then come through and they will work better for you. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is planting garlic. And I had to show you this picture. This is a picture of me years ago with my first garlic harvest, the first garlic that I pulled out of the ground. Garlic is a bulb, so it's planted differently, and you have to be a little more patient with garlic, because garlic actually won't be harvested until July the following year. So what you do is, there are two types of garlic, and you can purchase, these are called garlic seeds. Even though they're the garlic bulbs, they're called garlic seeds because we're going to use it for planting. You can purchase it at any garden store, or you can even purchase it from your local farmer, perhaps at a farmer's market. But organic garlic is what you definitely need to purchase. And there are two types of garlic. There is what we call the hardneck. And if you were to feel this, it is hard. It's a hard, almost like a stick. And then there's soft neck garlic, which does not have this stick in the center of it. Both garlics are very good and very tasty. The hardneck garlic I found tastes a little sharper, a little more potent. But it's important to know which type of garlic you're planting, and I'll explain after I tell you how to plant the garlic. So you separate the garlic clove from the bulb. Don't take off any of that paper around the clove. You need to have that on. If you take that off, what will happen is the clove will get infected and it won't grow properly. When you look at the garlic, you'll see it has a point, and we call that point the growing tip. That's where the flower, that's where the stalk, where the plant will come from. The fatter base, that's your roots. And what you do is you just take your soil. I'm going to do this to the edge so that you can get a sense. It's very important not to plant garlic too deep. The reason you don't want to plant garlic too deep is you'll regret it come July when you try to harvest your garlic, because it'll be hard to get out from the ground. So you don't want to plant it more than 2 inches. I was hoping that you could see this garlic really wants to be planted but basically just 2 inches. Yes, it definitely wants to be planted so you can't see it on the edge. And after you plant it 2 inches, then no more than 2 inches, maybe even 1 inch, then what you will do is you will put either straw or hardwood shredded mulch, and you will put 4 inches of that straw or that hardwood shredded mulch. That's important for several reasons. One is you want to retain the moisture. Oh, actually, I forgot. Before you do that, water the area. Before you put down your mulch or your straw, water it. Then put down your mulch or your straw, the 4 inches minimum. You can put down 6 inches and you're still all right. And then you are ready to let that grow and percolate and just be under the soil and get ready and start preparing for the springtime. Your other plants, when you're looking at your other garden, it'll be important to water your other plants at least once a week. And you want to water it at least 1 to 2 inches once a week to keep the plants moist. And what you want to do is you want to water the soil. You don't want to water the tops of the plants. A lot of people will put in a sprinkler system, and there are some benefits to a sprinkler system, but if you could put in a drip system, or if you could put in some soaker hoses, that's actually better, because you try to let nature water the leaves, not our Fairfax County water or wherever you live, the local community water. But you definitely want that soil around here watered. You don't need to water your garlic though, so usually nature will take care of the watering of the garlic. The next thing is I had talked about how most plants, your leafy plants, when you get the first frost, then what happens is that they'll do all right with the first frost, but after the first frost, if there's a killing frost, then you might have a problem. And so what I'd like to do is talk about how you can protect your crops. One of the things that you'd like to do is to extend the life of your crops. As I mentioned, when you're planting and you have the leafy greens in your garden, the first frost won't hurt them, but later frost might hurt them. And there are ways that you can protect your crop. You can when you hear that there's going to be freezing temperatures, what you can do is that you can take burlap, you can take an old sheet. In New England, when they had the plastic milk jars, some people would even cover their crops with plastic milk jars. Or you can actually get what is known as a harvest cloth. And this is a meshed cloth. What's good about a harvest cloth is because it's meshed, the air will flow through here, and you can leave the harvest cloth on actually during the day unless it gets very, very warm. Where with the burlap, it's a thicker material. Your bed sheet is definitely a thicker material, and what that means is that you use that to cover in the evening months or in the evening daytime, but I'm sorry, you use that to cover during the nighttime hours, but you want to take your bed sheets or your burlap off during the daytime hours, otherwise you might suffocate your crops. Where if you leave this on during the daytime hours because of the mesh, then you still are getting air circulation. The one thing that you never want to use is that you never want to use plastic. And the reason you never want to cover your crops with plastic is that the plastic doesn't let the crops breathe. The plastic forces the moisture to stay in the crops, and you could actually lose the crops with that plastic covering. So I had mentioned this before, but you don't need to worry about your carrots. You don't need to worry about your radishes. You actually don't even need to worry about your collard greens or your kale, The reason being is that they are crops that will survive to at least 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So remember, keep your eye on the temperature gauge, keep your eye on the weather report. Be sure to listen to whether or not you will be having any frost. Towards the end of October is when you start looking at the frost and how important it is to not let that frost get to your crops. Thank you for spending your time with me here at Gardening with Burke Nursery. I hope that you enjoy the fruits of your vegetable garden well into the fall and also into the early winter months. I'm looking forward to helping you grow your garden. Funding for this program is made possible by Burke Nursery and Garden Center in Burke, Virginia. You'll find trees and shrubs, perennials and annuals, water garden supplies, houseplants, and bird and gardening supplies. Burke Nursery also provides landscape, plant diagnostic, and installation services, as well as the October month-long Pumpkin Playground Festival featuring hayrides and much more. For more information, you can check out their website or call 703-323-1188.